When learning new languages, many people have many different methods that they use in order to understand the language that they want to speak. As I said in the previous video, every person is unique because every person has a unique way of learning. In this video, nonetheless, I would like to list the methods that I use personally to learn languages quickly and efficiently. I completely understand that some of these methods will not apply to everybody, which is the reason why I will not be saying that my methods are the best. Instead, I'll be listing the best ways to learn languages that perfectly work for me. One method or the other may not work for you, which is perfectly okay because we all have our unique ways of learning. Because languages have a beautiful art to them, many people learn them because they want to speak in them. Of course, learning new languages also develops contextual basics and enhances memorization skills, but the focus of this video is the top methods to speak new languages, beginning with the fundamentals. My number one method of learning to speak a new language is to speak it in your head 24/7 by translating words that you don't know. Even though it sounds insane, this process allows you to develop many things in your brain, regardless if you know or don't know the fundamentals of the language. By translating short sentences and eventually moving to words that you don't know, at some point, you will start memorizing enough information that you'll be able to piece together sentences using different words from different phrases without the need for a translator. The whole point of this method is to have as much useful information as you can in your mind so that later, once you have a strong enough basis, you'll be able to sub-vocalize and speak the language with yourself 24/7. What I recommend doing is dedicating about 2 to 3 hours per day to learning the grammatical context of the language that you want to learn, or if you want to speed up the process, you can look up information on social media and find one long video that puts all of the fundamentals in one take. After you're done with that, then you can focus on speaking the language with yourself so that you can understand what you're saying. The most significant part of this method is obtaining a lot of useful information to later understand that information, because having a lot of knowledge is one thing, but understanding it is completely different. After understanding the grammatical basis, you can then focus on speaking the language with yourself by creating timetables for when to speak and following that program for at least a few months. To make the process even more useful, you can simply say everyday actions that you do daily, repeat this plan for months, and have all of these sentences be locked in your head. By the time you're done, you'll be able to piece together sentences by pulling different words from different phrases, and finally, speak the language on a conversational or fluent level. My second method is something that connects with the first one, and that is translating words that you don't know so that later you can construct sentences without using a translator. To speak a language fluently, you have to understand what you say without the need to think about a translator, which means that at some point you will have to turn your memorization into fluency. But how are you going to do that if absolutely everything that you say is translated phrases from memorization? You can begin with a translator and translate short phrases and words that you don't know, but you want to be able to finish without one, because the whole point is not to translate everything, but simply the information that you don't know. You can find this information in newspapers, online sites, movies, TV shows, and anything else that has words on it. Even though it's kind of a gimmicky method, just remember that the best way for people to understand each other is translation. Another reason why it's gimmicky is because a lot of educators, especially Spanish teachers, will tell you to not use translators because they don't give the correct meaning of the text. The reason they say that is because they want you to be perfect from the start, but how can you be perfect if you're not willing to fail to learn from your mistakes? Failure is part of the process of success, but in school, you get punished for your mistakes, which can explain why students cannot speak in foreign language classes because they want to get it right on the first try, but don't know how. The way that I see it is that even if a translator doesn't give the right meaning, you still have to begin somewhere by understanding the information that you don't know. People understand other people using translation. People in the past understood each other using translators. People work as translators, and even students use them and learn more from them than from their teachers. At the end of the day, when you find new information that you don't know, you need to translate it to understand it. Translating information is good as long as you know and understand why you're doing it. My third method is to speak the language with native speakers. For many people, there are friends, siblings, and family members that they can speak with, which can allow them to learn the language more extensively, because when you speak with natives, you learn how to speak correctly from the beginning. Even though translators don't translate the correct words, they at least give the right meaning. In the beginning, you will have a ton of mistakes when you speak, and you should feel perfectly fine because you're still learning the principles of the language. Once you already feel like you have a sufficient amount of information, this is where you can begin correcting yourself, leading me to methods 4 and 5, which feel like mental thinking procedures that allow you to reinforce your speaking. Method number 4 is by speaking a new language, don't be afraid to make mistakes when you speak. Even though it's not a well-known concept, I cannot tell you how many students have seen that whenever the teacher asked them a simple question, students couldn't even say a single word, let alone a full sentence. The reason why is not because they were stupid, is because students in the education system think that they need to be perfect from the start, or otherwise they will not pass. Whenever they were about to say a sentence, they were afraid that if they made the slightest mistake, the teacher would kill them for that. If you're not willing to make mistakes, how are you willing to learn what you want? In schools, you're punished for your mistakes, but in a real conversation, even if you make a mistake when speaking, people will understand you. So don't be afraid to make mistakes when speaking a new language. Now, we get to method number 5, which corresponds to the previous method, and that is, don't try to be perfect from the beginning. If you try to be perfect from the start, you'll have so much information in your head that you wouldn't know where to start, which is unironically the reason students cannot speak in foreign language classes. Their minds have a lot of information, and teachers expect students to memorize all of this information and utilize it first try. Using this method, students get lost in their own thoughts and cannot say anything because they don't know where to start. If you try to be perfect from the beginning, the only thing you'll learn is what to say when speaking instead of how to say and how to think in the language that you want. By allowing yourself to make mistakes, you'll go from saying nothing to freely expressing your thoughts and putting together sentences using different words. And from there, you can start focusing on perfection. In conclusion, these are not the top 5 methods to learn to speak new languages, but rather, these are my top 5 methods that work for me. Of course, they may or may not work for you, which is perfectly okay, because every person has their own unique way of learning. Saying the language in your head 24/7, translating the information that you don't know, speaking with native speakers, not being afraid to make mistakes when speaking, and not being perfect from the beginning. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you learned something from this video.